Hello everyone, this is Sam, and in today's video we're having the first episode of the flipping series. This is intended to be the first of 3 episodes as we're going to cover all the theoretical information that you need to have in order to start flipping in GW2. Of course, what I'm going to give you isn't simply going to be some theoretical information, but also some practical one as well as some cases that you guys can work with in order to get used to what flipping entails, and also in order to avoid some beginner mistakes that you would otherwise be prone to making. But first, let's listen to the intro. And now that we're back together, I will be revealing today's topic. So today's topic will be demand and supply. And in order to properly approach this, the best way for us to start is to remember what the GW2 interface looks like. So for this, I'm going to be doing a little drawing, the usual one, in the shape of a T. So here you have your item. And here, as we said before, you'll have the bids, and you'll have the listings. Now, what does it mean? It means that you actually have a way to read into demand and supply, as the demand would naturally be where the bids are, and the supply where the listings are. However, this is not perfect information because you can only scroll through so many of the bids and so many of the listings. So the best way for you to understand demand and supply from a practical point of view would be to have a look at some API wrappers or some websites that use said APIs. I personally use SilverS's API wrapper because it is a very good one, but you can use GW2bltc.com in order to have what you want. And now for the theoretical information, what you want to have when you look at demand and supply is the variation of demand and supply on a given time frame. What I mean with that is that you want to be able to see the delta, so that's the proper symbol for variation, of demand or supply, because that is going to tell you how many of an item gets bought and how many of an item gets sold within said time frame. Now what you want to do is, of course, to be able to make your way into flipping these items. And for there, you want to look at items, at least when you're going to get started, that have similar demand and supply. What does that mean? That means that you want to look at a balanced market. A balanced market is one where the demand and the supply are about the same, and they also vary at the same speed, which means that if you try to buy an item, you're going to get them, and if you try to sell them, you're going to sell them, right? Because what you don't want to do when flipping is to be stuck with your items. For a reminder, flipping is the action of buying and selling the same item within a time frame of about 1 day to 1 week. So when you flip, you really want to be able to make sure you're going to get your bid filled, and you're going to be able to get your listing pulled. And this, of course, while minding the tax, because as always, you want to keep the difference between the prices good enough for you to make profit on it. Now that we have covered all of that, what are some balanced markets that you guys could be trying your way in? For example, crafting material markets are pretty good as a balanced one. Of course, such a market means that your margins are going to be quite low, and you're going to have to trade a huge volume in order to be able to make good money. Some other markets that have smaller volume but better return on each flip are, for example, runes, sigils, food, other consumables, such markets that have slightly higher value per flip, but or of course you're not going to be able to flip in the quantities that you would on a crafting material market. Because as we said before, the variation is key. If you are on a crafting material market, for instance, within an hour you're probably going to have tens of thousands of an item being bought and sold. Think mithril, think elderwood. Right now we had the patch where the curious showed up. This is typically the type of market that goes very fast and where demand and supply are about the same, and also everything gets bought and sold at the same pace. These are very good markets if you want to look at how flipping works. Not necessarily going to make a lot of cash because they're not always profitable, but still it is a good way to learn. So when you look at this variation in the demand or supply that has to be relatively balanced, as we said earlier, at least when you start, you're going to have to think, how much of that could I do? Alright, you're going to think, okay, I have an hour ahead of me, let's try and flip some stuff. How much of that variation in demand or supply can I move? What I would advise is starting out at 1%. Always be the 1%, right? This is where you are. This is what you do. You try to move 100 of these, right? If you manage to, then you can increase that number. 2%, 5%, 10%. I wouldn't advise to go any bigger than 10%, especially when you're starting out, because you want to be sure that your flip is going to go through. And this is how demand and supply play into flipping. Of course, when I mentioned some markets that have less demand and supply, I still mean that the markets have to have at least some movement on a decent time frame. You can't flip on markets that have low demand and even lower supply. Makes no sense. You're not going to be able to make it. An example would be, for example, legendaries. Like if someone tells you they're flipping legendaries, they're probably just joking about it, right? Because you can't possibly do something like this. The speed at which you get the items and sell them back doesn't have any positive impact on your wallet, because you could otherwise be moving much bigger volumes at a lower price and trade for more value overall. Anyways, this covers the first topic, and I hope that you guys found this video interesting and that you learned something useful, be it in Guild Wars 2 or for your general life, because these topics can be applied to a lot of other stuff than just our favorite game. Now, if you've enjoyed this video, you're more than welcome to give me a thumbs up, to leave a comment on it, or who knows, maybe taking it a step further. You could join my Discord where you can ask questions and meet, for example, Silverus, who worked on that API. You can also find him on the Guild Wars 2 Economy Discord, very good one. And if you want to take everything a step further, you could always support me on Patreon. Speaking about Patreon, I wish to thank them. They are the ones making all of these contents possible and available, and I wish to thank them from the bottom of my heart. I also wish to thank all of my Twitch subscribers that still somehow sub to me, even though I can't stream as much as I would like to. And now, I wish every single one of you some happy trading and to get rich.